Hello everyone, my name is Jose Avalos, aka Dr. Logicate, and we have a special guest today.
My name is Troy Johnson. I don't have a fancy, cool gamer name that you might all know me by, but I'm actually a toy box designer at Avalanche Software.
Yes, and in this tutorial we will talk about what to me is the biggest game changer for Disney Infinity, which is the Path Creator, which Troy had a very big hand on creating, which will make your toy boxes more amazing. The best way of showing what the Path Creator is by actually placing one. So that is exactly what we're going to be doing. For that, we open up the editor and we will go to the Creativity Toys category. And we will go to the Path Creator, which is this particular green dot. So what we will do is first we replace the starting point, and then we will start placing control points one by one. And as we're placing them, you can see how it changes the curve or the path in real time. And you can use this for many kinds of things like attaching enemies or making your own rides, but there's so much more to it that meets the eye. So let's take a look at how we can configure it. So for that, we will go to we select it with the magic wand, and I just press the button for creating new path points. So for example, if you're not happy with this, I select one of the control points and I press the bottom prompt that has that plus sign on the upper right corner of the screen. So if I press it, I can start making new points.
So this is a really simple way of adding a little bit of complexity or just changing the shape or making the path a little bit longer if it wasn't quite the distance that you needed to be. But it still then allows you to keep all the previous points and individually manually adjust those as well if you want to.
Exactly. So now let's see how we can configure this. So we will go to the properties. And okay, Troy, now we can go starting talking what the properties are. What does it mean that it's active?
So active basically means that when you attach objects to it, they can move. It's almost, think of it as the power switch for this particular toy.
Okay.
Only if it is on can anything that's attached to it be moving.
All right, perfect. Now, speed. And now it says 100, but it's 100 what exactly?
So that's actually kind of a percentage of its base speed value, I guess you could say. So if you turn it down to 50, everything on the entire path is going to move at half the speed as it was at 100. Likewise, you can put it up to 200 or 300, and they'll move at twice the speed or 3 times the speed. Now, this affects everything that is attached to this particular path. As a side note, if I say spline, I apologize.
It's a path.
Yes, the spline refers to the path. It's kind of a technical term that we use in game development for these kinds of curves in the world that things can that can be used to guide things.
Loop is self-explanatory. If I set it on and now exit it, you will see that now the curve or the spline loops perfectly on itself. So you're making a connection between the last point that we made, that was this particular one, and the starting point, which is always the green dot.
So this particular property basically allows you to, in a simple way, change the shape of the path without having to worry about, how do I reconnect the last point to the start point? Do I have to overlap and press a button or something like that? You don't have to worry about that. All you have to do is just toggle this property, and you can immediately just stop it looping or set the loop again.
All right, perfect. And now let's see what is rail slide. And in fact, the best way of showing this is that if it's on, I can just jump on it and it will behave as any rail slide. So we can make your own custom rail slide and not depend so much on the rail slide pieces that we had in Disney Infinity 1 and 2. But you can still use them. It's just that if you want to get a particular shape that you're not used to or that is not available in the game, you can actually create your own with this property, with the rail slide.
Exactly. So I also want to point out here that, Jose, if you'll actually back out of the menu and put away the magic wand, or, just go ahead and start riding the rail first, and then put away the magic wand.
Yes, okay.
So you can make all kinds of secret paths that you could rail slide among with invisible rail slides, if that was something you wanted to do. Something that might be just a little bit whimsical or fun for you.
Yeah, and thanks for actually giving that note, because now we will talk about the next property, which is, in this particular thing, visual effect on path. If you notice, when I took away the wand, the rail slide became invisible. So if the player doesn't have the wand because it's either a toy box game or you don't want them to, how can they see the path? And that is exactly what its visual effect on path is. So for example, if we set it up to green sparkles, now if we back out of it and I hide the wand, you can see that it will show it across the entire spline.
So this way you get a chance to do something cool, like create a trail that guides a player to a new area or to a secret, but you don't have to have the full kind of physical, solid-looking visuals that look more like a tool, which is really what the toy is.
All right, perfect. And now we will have, and finally, we have the one that we're going to see in this tutorial, because then there's other properties, but that is beyond the scope of this particular video, is auto start objects when connected. Thing is, when you connect something like a block or something, they will start moving across the spline immediately. And in fact, we will show that straight away. So now I'll just leave it as none. And let's now make a series of moving platforms, which is one of the many uses you can give to this particular toy. So for that, we will go to the basic blocks category, and we will put a square block, the classic one. And now we need to, we can attach it to this particular path. So for that, we will select the gear icon that we have in the lower right screen, and any toy that says new path connection can be attached to a particular path creator. What kind of other stuff we can have beyond square blocks?
So, man, I mean, so many things. There are a lot of interesting set pieces that we thought would be a great idea to put on there. So a lot of the kind of ship or boat-like things. Think of the Star Destroyer, for example. You can put one of these up in your sky and put it on a path so that it flies around your toy box.
Man, that's awesome. So for attaching something to a spline, we select it and we put new path connection. And then we have to select the starting point, always the starting point of the path creator. We select it and we say toy box path. And that's it. Now the block will move automatically, but you might notice that the block doesn't orient itself along the path. And there's actually a way of controlling that. For that, we need to select the block, and we will see that now it has properties. And these properties are generated dynamically when you connect an object to the path creator.
So I think that's a good point that Jose makes. Whenever you attach things to paths, make that path connection, they will in real time suddenly have new properties and new logic connections. So be sure to check those out, because oftentimes different objects have slightly different path connection properties and logic connections than even other objects that are connected to paths. For example, vehicles that are attached to paths have a few different options than blocks, or enemies have a few different options than set pieces might. So they're all going to interact in some basic ways that you'd expect, but then there might be some cool secrets or some cool specialty behaviors that they can have as well.
Yeah, in this case, well, for example, in the square block, in the toy box path, we're only gonna give like, okay, what is this particular properties? Because now it says speed 100. So what happens if I modify this number?
So this is an interesting one. You'll notice that, like Jose just said, we have this speed property on the block itself. But if you remember, the path creator, the main guide also has a speed property. So these actually work in tandem and multiply across each other. So you can change the base speed of the entire path using the path creator's property, but you can also then adjust that for the individual objects like this block that are on the path as well. So you can increase the base speed of the entire spline, but then reduce the speed for this particular block. So you could set this to 50 per se, and you'll see that when we let it start moving again, it's going to be moving at half the speed that it was.
Yeah, so basically the goal with this is that you can have objects, even if they're moving on the same spline, they can move at different speeds. That's what I mean. That's what this is. Now,
Precisely.
if we put orient along the path, if I set it to on, you will notice that the square aligns itself automatically alongside the path. Now,
So this basically makes it so that the forward-facing direction on the toy always points forward along the direction of the spline. So it will curve, it will rotate, and even if you have a spline that moves kind of up and down through the air, it will also match that kind of movement.
yeah, that's awesome. So, reset point. This percentage is that if we make a connection that says reset the spline, this will be the percentage of the total spline path upon which where the object will respawn.
Exactly. So think of the entire path as if it were a straight line, or you have halfway along that path is 50%. This basically allows you to choose a starting point, almost a reset point, at which that block or whatever other object will consider its reset point. So that you can say, if I want to reset an entire path full of different objects, you can make them all reset to different points before they start moving again. So you can get the right spacing that you want, or even just kind of the right pattern.
Nice. And that's the reset point, but also we have start point and end point. So using the same analogy that Troy just used, if we set up, for example, start point 0 and end point 100, it will move alongside the entire spline. But if we change these values, we can have it so this object or this square block only moves a certain part of the spline itself. So you can also have objects that only move partially alongside the spline and not entirely.
Exactly. So basically, the start point percentage and the end point percentage allow you to kind of shorten the distance or shorten the route for specific objects.
Yeah, so now what I'm doing is doing start point percentage 20 and then let's say 60. So it will move only a part of it. Now, horizontal offsets, we will see those in a second. Rotation, you can see that if I change this, the the object will rotate on itself. This is a base rotation in addition to the orientation that the object will, in this case, will have alongside the spline. And now movement style, by default, objects loop. So they go from the beginning until the last point of the spline and then reappear or pop in back into the starting point. But we can also change their movement style so they go one way and stop, or back and forth. Or we can do it on reverse, or we can say go one way and then disappear. Now, you have to be really careful on this one, because if you have logic connections, like say, hey, change the sky or something, and you use it, once they are deleted, those logic connections disappear as well.
Yes, so that one's dangerous. Use only if you know exactly what your desire is for that one.
Or you don't have any logic connections on the object at all. So now let's go with, say, back and forth. So now let's see how the object moves. So now we will see that the object, the square, is moving, part of a path. And now it's going back.
So it reached the 60% distance along the spline, along the path that Jose set.
Yep.
And that's where it considered its endpoint. So then at that point it's going to go back and forth. So it'll reverse directions, head back, and because it thinks the beginning or its own start percentage is 20%, like Jose set up, it can now just bounce back and forth between those two percentage points, as it were, along this particular path.
Oh gosh. Stay put. Sorry, I went to delete it actually. My bad. I'm sorry. I'm very clumsy with these controls.
Well, I'm actually impressed that you're using the keyboard to do this all. I can't do it if I'm not holding the controller in my hand.
Okay. Now what we will do is actually create a series of moving platforms, and we can also attach more than one object. So if you want to have a series of moving platforms, more than one, you can actually do that as well. And that's exactly what we're going to be showing right now. So first things first, we need to make sure that auto start objects when connected is off, so they don't start moving right away, and we will see what positions they're going to have at the beginning of the spline, which is crucial if you want to make moving platforms.
So the idea behind this particular property was that we think for a lot of early users or a lot of people that just want to experiment and see what this path creator is all about, the easiest thing to get that going is to just say, hey, as soon as you connect something, it's moving, no extra steps necessary, you get to see something cool happen immediately the moment you make that connection. This is kind of a more advanced property where you know what you're looking for. You know what you're going to build. You've got some plan in mind, so that when you toggle this off, the objects themselves, they will get onto the path, but they will tell themselves, I'm going to specifically turn my own movement off when I am attached to this. So the whole path itself is still technically active, is still technically turned on, but the objects themselves upon attachment, they will say, but my personal movement, I as a square block, when I get attached, I will turn myself off on this path and wait until I'm told to move.
Yes. Okay, so now let's place a series of blocks. Let's attach two of them, actually. So first I'm going to select square block 1, and I'm going to select another second square. And also for seeing the positions of the objects, we are going to also place an action button. You will see why in a second. So let's say that first we will attach this first block to the square, and by default, every time you make a connection, the objects will always be transported to the origin, to the starting point of the spline. But if we want to move it somewhere else, we are going to change the properties and say, hey, we're going to be using the offsets. So what offset is the distance relative to the starting point of the spline where this block is going to be. So, and we have a particular range. How much is it?
I think it's 50, 20?
Yeah, it's,
which I remember. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's 50 units, for example,
Okay,
to the
perfect.
left, and 50 units to the right. And now you might be asking yourself, oh, but how much is that? It's around 12 or 13 of these basic blocks. So you can just place them and realize, okay, this is how much space I have.
Precisely.
So how many objects can you attach to a spline? You can attach many. It's just a matter of more, how many can you fit
Yes.
within the spline?
Exactly. So to give you some context on these units of offset, a block is 4 units wide
Yes, so that's why I mentioned like around 13 of these.
to get to the max.
But if we change these numbers, you will not see them, change. So what we need to do is actually reset the path. So for that, we will make a connection between the button. So new logic connection, and this one is pressed. We will go back to the path creator and say reset and stop. But now we see other options. So what is exactly it means that it's on and off?
So since he's selected the whole path creator for this particular reactive behavior, these on and off options refer to the active state of the entire path. So on would be turn the entire path on. Again, that is universal for all objects, but those individual objects can still be turned off themselves and therefore have their own settings, so they might not move. Off will then turn off the entire path, in which case nothing will be able to move on that particular path until you turn it on again.
Okay, and then reset and stop, it places all the objects on the reset position that we set up before on the properties of the square block, but they won't move. Whereas reset and play means that put all the objects on its reset position and then make them start moving alongside the spline. The other ones are a little bit more advanced to what we have for the scope of this video. So if we push this button, whoa.
Oh, did you actually make the connection? I think you might have not
Oh.
made the connection. There it
I
is.
didn't. I'm sorry,
Cancel
everyone.
that. He just wanted to show you guys more of the cool stuff.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, let's keep it that way. So we didn't make the connection. So now push the button, and you will see that the position of the block is a bit, it's different. Now it's a little bit higher because I used the horizontal offset 4 units up, and well, minus 4 units because of the orientation of the world. In this regard, making all these objects move, like, it's a lot of trial and error.
There's going to be
frustrating.
something, and each path in relation to itself will have the same directions and things like that. But yeah, you'll have to try and see which direction is negative, which is positive, depending on the direction that it's pointing in the orientation of your world.
Yeah, but pro tip, vertical positive, it's always up.
Yes, that one you can count on.
Yeah.
Vertical positive always up, vertical negative always down.
Yes. So toy box path, and now let's say that horizontal offset is 4, and now vertical offset, let's keep it 0 so the both of them are together. Or you know what, let's go with 4. So now if we changed it, let's push the button again, and now you will see that all these objects are, you know, in a proper position, or a position that I want. And now if I change the connection to say now reset and play, the two platforms are gonna start moving together using the same movement. They're not facing the curve properly because that property is off, but you get the gist of it. So, oh, and also we have something interesting. We can also modify the speed of these objects using logic connections. Not just in the properties at the beginning, but also when an object reaches a certain point in the path. So let's say, for example, that I want one of these blocks to move faster once I reach this point, and then return to the original speed once I reach this second point. So there's 2 ways in which we can modify the speed. One is going to the properties of the path point, and you will see that there's a speed modifier percentage. Just as we had beforehand, like with the path itself, we can also say that if I increase this number to 200, every object on the path, once it reaches that point, it will move at twice the speed. But then, once they get into the next point, if that one is 100, they will go back to the original speed.
So I think that's something to point out, is they actually will blend between adjacent path points. So at the very point of this point where you're modifying the speed, when an object hits that point, they will have reached the speed modifier that you've set here. And then by the time they reach the next point, they will have reached that path point's speed modifier percentage. So there's this blending effect. So you get a nice kind of smooth transition between speeds instead of just immediately changing.
Yes. But if we want to like alter just one object inside the path, we can actually make a logic connection. So when we say point reach by object on path, in this case it will fire twice because we have 2 objects attached to it. So if we make it, let's say, let's make this one toy box path. Let's increase the speed, and increase the speed this by 1, by 5, or by 100. Is it a percentage? Or is it a like total, or?
It's a percentage modifier for that particular object. It's as if you had changed the property of that object's speed.
All right, interesting. So let's say we'll put it to 100. And now when we get here.
So you just saw, maybe you noticed that it doubled in speed suddenly.
Yes, and now point reached by object on path. And now this is going to be the trial of me trying to. Whoa, I'm sorry. Just this object is moving so fast. Yes! And now we will decrease the speed. So now it's moving, well, now we will decrease it by 100. So it will reach that point, moves faster, and then starts moving slower again, until we reach the second point, upon which it will continue to move fast. And well, that's a very basic overview of what you can do with splines. And stay tuned for parts like 2, 3, and 4, where we see other uses like moving enemies across the map, or making checkpoint races. So I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any questions, please let us know in the comments or in the forums. And well, thank you for watching. See ya, everyone.
Thanks, guys.